Evening, everyone. This is Colonel John McDonald at the Coventry Police Station. Just reaching out on about 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Relatively quiet night for us so far from my office here listening to the radio. I wanted to reach out tonight and go over a few slides with everyone. Basically, they are the frequently asked questions that we've been receiving about the Question 8 bond and the building project. So this briefing represents about a third of the full briefing that Pat Shurtleff of Human Services and I do at the public meetings. So we want to mention two of those meetings. Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock this week, we'll be at the Westwood Estates Community Room, where we'll do the full briefing and give you a greater scope on the building itself, the project, the history, the needs of both buildings, and so please, we encourage the public to come out and join us for that. It'll be a larger scope on that briefing. We'd also ask anyone who has interest to come out on Thursday to the open house at the police department. We're doing it from 4 to 7. During that time, we'll have a larger briefing again at 4:30, 5:30, and 6:30. Which will cover some of these frequently asked questions, but we'll also walk through the building and actually see some of the shortcomings of the police department firsthand. Next week, Pat and I will also do the first part of this briefing on the internet. We'll send it out on Facebook so that we'll show and give a full overview of the scope of the project. And we'll also be doing a short video on Pat's building at Human Services to show everyone what she faces over there on a daily basis. So we'll move on to the next slide. This represents most of the questions that we've seen, and I'll just read through them here. Number one, everyone wants to know what's the cost to the taxpayer, and I have about 4 slides that I'll go through that'll hopefully give everyone an idea of what they may see as a tax increase on this. Full disclosure, we don't try to pretend that it won't be a tax increase, but we hope to show the value of the project to everyone and how it's going to bring value to the community for the dollars spent. The second question, how would we compare to other towns? That slide is 2 slides. We'll talk about the size of our PD and how old the building is compared to other communities. Why can't the police expand in place? We'll talk about our building and what prohibits us from expanding here at the police department. Why this location and not another? So why the Human Services building and not the Town Hall Annex, which is the old Washington Oak School, which we hear a lot of questions about that location, or the old Walmart or old Kmart Plaza over on Route 3. We get a lot of questions about that site as well. What will happen to the police building itself? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about traffic on Wood Street, the presence of the police department over there, and whether or not that would reduce property values. We've heard from a few folks in that area. We'll talk about that a little bit. People are asking about the Veteran Memorial Park concept out front, so we'll talk briefly about that at the end, and then just get into some federal and state funding that we possibly could qualify for. So on to the first question, what will it cost to the taxpayer? This first slide here was given to us by the town finance director, Bob Tebow. You'll see the highlighted section here. This represents the bond debt service in year 1. If we were to draw the $12 million together all at once. That is not what the plan is currently. The plan is to draw the bond in 2 phases. One would be upfront, $5 million, here where you see the cursor. $4 to $5 million would do the first phase of the project, which is the wing for Human Services, the new part of the building, which will be built first. So you would see that in the first year, $4 to $5 million being drawn, and that's the debt service on that first year. And then the final part of the second phase of the project would be approximately $6 to $7 million to rehabilitate the current building in the front into a police department. And that would be this number here, $481,250. So the tax levy and tax rate, a couple of takeaways from this slide is this percent increase to the levy. It's a 0.49% increase to the tax levy in year one, FY17 and 18. And the residential tax rate goes from 2141 to 2151. Year two of the bond, as it's drawn, would see a 0.68% increase and a rise of 2151 to 2166. So a little bit of a busy slide here, but the takeaways, if you look at year one here, FY17-18, you're looking at across the board an average home in Coventry. The $150,000 to $400,000 home would see an increase here in this line. So a $150,000 home would see a $15 increase in that first year, up to a $400,000 home would see a $40 increase. Median home, I always like to say here, the $250 range, you're looking at about a $25 increase in taxes in FY17 and 18. Moving down the slide to FY18-19, the second half of the bond would be issued, and for the average median home there would be about $36 increase that day, and you can see it across the board. And the next slide breaks that out into a little easier read. So here's a tax increase by home value. Again, looking to the left here, let's take that average home, that median home at $250, and the first year in FY17-18 you're looking at about $26 increase, and then the second part of the bond drawn in year two would be $36. So I like to point out this column here. You know, what's the monthly payment? What am I going to see as I pay my mortgage each month and pay my bills? It's about a $2.50 per month increase over 2 years. That's what you'll pay per month over the 2 years as an increase to your taxes. So we hope that the value of this project, you can see, is, you know, that shock value of $12 million up front. As you break it down, it's you know, a little over $60 in that 2-year period for the median home, and we hope that you know, that number isn't too much for us to consider when we talk about the value of this project. So moving on to the next slide. So how does Coventry compare to other communities as far as the age of the police department? And you'll see there that we do register there in the bottom 5 around the state of Rhode Island. We threw out Rhode Island State Police and Providence as they're the 2 largest agencies, but we still we register there in the lowest part of the state, even significantly lower by 20 years or so from West Warwick, who was built in 1960. So I think this slide speaks for itself as far as how old the PD is. Next slide, you know, I just wanted to highlight here, where does Coventry compare to with size of the agency, and we use the size of the number of officers in the agency here to the right to show that calls for service, the volume, how we've expanded in the amount of police work we're doing here in town. We register up in the top 10 in size and volume of calls for service. So why not expand the police building in place? A lot of people ask this question. I like to show the overhead of the police department to sort of illustrate why this isn't a good spot to try to build a police station. This is the overhead view here. The police station is 5,000 square feet. So if we were to try to even add on 10,000 square feet, and by comparison at Human Services, we would be looking at 18 to 20,000 square feet of a renovation. You can see that we're easily going to have to be required to eminent domain the church here to the left and the homes on Batty Ave to get the type of space we would need and the parking we would need to properly renovate the building. You know, and to do that to a 75-year-old building, I don't think makes financial sense. It's not a great investment. So moving on to our next slide here, why the Human Services location and not another? Why not the Town Hall Annex, the old Washington Oak School, the old Kmart? Let me show you where the X there represents the Town Hall Annex. The next X represents the Kmart Plaza. And here is where the Human Services building is now, and roughly about the same location where our current PE is. You can see how this location lines up as sort of the center the heartbeat of town here for us with the road structure and the network. You'll see our areas here, our 4 patrol areas where our primary largest volume of calls for service occur, and this is right at the heart of that. Area 4 out here sees a lot less calls for service. That's why they have a volunteer fire department out that way. Good for them that they don't see as much calls for service, but it's definitely centrally located. The Human Services Building, eastern, and sort of at the heartbeat of what the police work of our town is. So we believe the location is really the right location. I'd also quickly add here that town hall annex, the old school, is 115,000 square feet, and we'd have to carve out of that about 20,000 square feet in the back to put a police department inside. That really represents a security issue for us with cutting off hallways and doorways. So it doesn't present well for a police department, but there is a committee in town underway which is looking at that for office space and for other departments. So I don't believe it'll remain unused. This is also the spot that's been talked about for the buses. The school department and the physical plant for the school department and the buses will be moved, and the school administration is also in that building currently, so it seems to make sense to perhaps reunite those. Not our decision, obviously, but they're working with the school department to find a home for those buses. So again, one of these questions that we get a lot here is the Wood Street question, and would the police department cause traffic issues on Wood Street? We don't believe it would. We did work with State DOT, though. We've met with them, and we think a part of the site design for this should be a 4-way stop sign on Wood Street. We get rid of that island that's out there, and we believe that would significantly discourage that rush hour traffic that uses Wood Street in the morning and the evenings. So the ball field remains largely untouched. What you see here is a dirt road that we would use and actually pave and make an official use only road for police vehicles to use to go out the Sandy Bottom Road. That would be our primary ingress and egress from the property. We would not use sirens in the back lot. As people have asked us, would there be a lot of sirens? No, we wouldn't. We'd use it out on Sandy Bottom Road. So looking at the neighborhood here from the front, a lot of people ask the noise pollution I just mentioned, the sirens in the back lot. That's an easy fix. We just would not use our sirens in the back lot. We test them out on the main road. And I think as you look at the Veterans Memorial out front and the 4-way stop sign, I think you're going to see the value of that neighborhood and the surrounding area go up, if anything. I don't think the site itself, I think with the amenities that it'll provide and the services can only bring value to the neighborhood. The Memorial Park design and funding, again, that's wide open. That I think we would look right away to propose forming a Memorial Park Committee. We would represent all factions of town that wanted to be involved in that, and we would largely offset the cost of that through donations and pavers and things like you just saw with the West Warwick Memorial. Really excited about that project. And so what will happen to the old police station if we move out? It could be sold to offset the cost of the project. It does have a lot of value commercially, though. You could see a doctor's office here, lawyers' offices. We think it has a lot of value commercially, or the town could utilize it for any other of the departments in town, like Parks and Recs, that teen center, maybe an upgrade there. So it definitely has value. Federal funding, we see a lot of opportunities in federal funding. Perhaps a police fire dispatch center, we could write grants for that. Look to the Champlin Foundation for some of the site work. And we would look to put an emergency operations center in the building so that we could get some opportunities to offset the cost of the project with some federal funding or state funding opportunities. So as we close out questions, I just asked if you have questions, feel free to email question8@coventrypd.org, or you could write questions underneath here at the Facebook page. Just ask your questions and we'll try to get to them as quickly as we can. We don't monitor it 24/7, but feel free to ask your questions. We appreciate the support the town has shown us over the last really busy couple of months, and we look forward to seeing you at public meetings. Thanks for the support, and vote yes on question 8.